Let's be a reaction streamer. Welcome to the stream, guys. Let's go.
The soldiers steady themselves against the sides of a Higgins boat as another breaker pummels the landing craft. In the back, one poor man can't keep his chow down, and in the front, someone runs prayer beads through his fingers. Another salvo from the battleships. Surely nothing could have survived the bombardment. The boat's helmsman calls out, "Time to go ashore." The landing ramp collides with a concrete seawall, fragments of a ladder falling imply into the...
Did you imagine you're born at the right time and you're a military freak in the US? As an 18-year-old, you see World War II. You then go to the Korea War, and as an old man, you're in the Vietnam War, man. That's the one guy in We Were Heroes, the Mel Gibson movie. There's this one guy who paradropped France, Korea War, and then he was finally in the Battle of that Valley, man.
The passenger bay. The Americans scramble out of the boat, scaling the concrete as their enemy opens fire. But it is not the chatter of an MG-42 that greets these United States Marines, but the slow chug of a Soviet machine gun. This is Incheon, South Korea, and like the Normandy landings...
So the South Korea was about to get fucked, and then actually the Americans saved everything.
Barely 6 years before, this amphibious invasion will turn the tide of a war.
I never knew this, that they even lost soul shit.
Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the armchair historian. The seeds that would grow into the...
Griffin looks like a guy that likes 40k. I wonder if he collects 40k, man. I wonder.
Korean War were sown in 1945, when the Soviet Red Army invaded the peninsula following its declaration of war on Imperial Japan, which had held Korea since 1910. Soviet forces advanced down the peninsula. They reached the 38th parallel, then halted while the US troops landed in the south and moved to meet them, splitting the peninsula in two. The Soviets established a communist provisional government in the north, elevating Kim Il-sung, a hero of the insurgency against Japan, to the head of government. Consolidating power, Sung declared the formation of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
The UN freaked out and called the Defense Council.
Espousing democratic socialism, but practicing brutal authoritarianism. With North Korea lost to communism, the Americans decided to push back by establishing the First Republic of Korea. But this state was hardly a bastion of liberty and democracy. South Korea's first experience with democracy bore a disappointing resemblance to affairs in the DPRK. When elections were held in July of 1948, US-backed candidate Syngman Rhee just barely made it over the threshold with an entirely unsuspicious 92.6% of the popular vote. Both Rhee's administration in the south and Sung's administration in the north wanted nothing more than to reunite the two halves of the peninsula under their respective governments, making conflict between north and south inevitable. Rhee declared his intent to reconquer the north to American envoys and followed up his statements with a Soviet-style purge of ideological opponents, including the Chechu uprising by
The Bodo League massacre saw the deaths of up to 200,000 South Korean communists and suspected communists. Man, this was truly an age of purges, huh?
Elements, which led to between 30,000 and 60,000 casualties.
But not that many.
Rhee's roughshod approach caused his American backers to limit their investment in what they saw more akin to a diet democracy than a truly free state.
All the rights, all the flavor.
Even if Rhee had gotten his war, American support would have been hard to come by. The readiness of America's ground forces had dropped precipitously, and by 1950, of the 10 combat divisions in the United States Army, only one, the 82nd Airborne, was considered combat ready, leaving the South defended exclusively by the Republic of Korea Army, or ROK Army. Observing this weakness, Kim Il-sung began to believe that he could rapidly invade and conquer South Korea. Eventually, Sung launched his invasion, but claimed to his dying day that it was a righteous response to a surprise attack from the south, which was conveniently defeated so decisively by the Korean People's Army that no evidence of the invaders was left. Meanwhile, in
old
his
false
memoirs, Nikita Khrushchev stated, "I must stress that the war wasn't Stalin's idea, but Kim Il-sung's. Kim was the initiator. Stalin, of course, didn't try to dissuade him." The Korean War was a very unique kind of proxy war, where the larger US and USSR were mostly against a conflict that their clients in Korea were all too keen to initiate. And initiate they did.
Is this the first proxy war?
In the early hours of
Cold
June
War?
25th, 1950, the Korean People's Army, or KPA, crossed the 38th parallel with an armored spearhead of 150 T-34-85s, rapidly pushing the ROK Army back towards Seoul and capturing both Kaesong and Uijeongbu. Yet despite the dire situation, it was late evening before news reached the Secretary of Defense, who begrudgingly woke up long enough to leave orders for General Douglas MacArthur to investigate rumors of a disturbance along the 38th parallel before going back to sleep. While he slumbered, the ROK Army Chief of Staff, Chae Pyong-duk, was seemingly busy doing his best to lose the war as quickly as possible. Thanks to multiple communication failures, his counterattack with the 2nd and 7th Divisions east of Uijeongbu broke down in confusion. The isolated 1st Division put up fierce resistance, but with limited anti-tank weaponry, they could do little against the horde of T-34s. With retreat as the only reasonable course of action, General Chae instead ordered his troops to hold fast. Soon the 1st Division was alone, fighting a doomed last stand as the static South Korean positions were systematically annihilated. President Ri then fled Seoul, and just 2 days after the invasion began, the capital fell to the KPA.
That's some blitzkrieg, man. They learned from the best. Yeah. These animations are so
General
good,
MacArthur then ordered the commander of the 8th U.S. Army, Lieutenant General Walton Walker, to prepare all available forces in the Far East and immediately dispatch them to South Korea. This turned out to be a depressingly tiny force, consisting of only the 24th Infantry Division, armed with a charmingly vintage arsenal dating back from the Second World War. Even worse, only 6 transport planes were available, which could carry a single battalion.
Elon Musk has more.
This battalion was designated Task Force Smith, and was quickly launched
Isn't that weird to think we live in the world? Imagine there's a World War III. There's people that rich, like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. They could probably build their own armies. The equipment, the manpower, everything. They could, like an Elon Musk could probably build, like, totally an army, bro. Like, easily. And he'll probably pay his soldiers better than the government, man. Listen, I have a weird question. I have a really, really weird thought. Imagine we are billionaires, right? Like, I'm a billionaire streamer, and you guys are my little advisors. Now, we have $100 billion, okay? I wonder what the international law is on this. So, you and me, we decide we want to use our millions of dollars to build a private army. We're gonna build a mega, like 100,000 soldiers. Highly trained men, crazy equipment. We're spending billions on this. I then call Mr. Zelensky and say, Zelensky, I'm ready to send you my private army, 100,000 motherfuckers. We're gonna shit on Russia. How would that work? Is there any law on that shit? How does the UN react? What is happening there? Russian oligarch moment?
At dawn on July 5th, Task Force Smith engaged the KPA for the first time at the Battle of Pusan. But their equipment
Elon, stop putting that little dog on Twitter, you fucking...
proved useless against KPA tanks.
What are you doing?
They were quickly overwhelmed. However, they did hold just long enough for the bulk of the 24th Infantry Division to secure Pusan.
Wait, there is Americans all of a sudden.
Unfortunately, all other actions the 24th participated in afterward were abject failures, and the unit eventually sustained over 6,000 casualties, including its commander. But these sacrifices bought time for the United States.
Check out this new Mr. Beast video. I bought 100,000 Russian mercenaries to save Ukraine.
To mobilize its full military might. Within days, America had established total air and naval superiority.
Yeah, you don't fuck with America.
The Korean
man.
sky constantly filled with withering...
By the war's end, the US dropped more ordnance on North Korea than had been deployed for the entire Pacific theater of the Second World War.
Bombing raids on both the invading army and North Korean infrastructure. Yet Kim Il-sung refused to back down. And on August 4th, the KPA launched an all-out assault on the perimeter around Pusan. The KPA found the Americans...
I wonder, don't tell me, he's gonna tell. I wonder why the Americans didn't go into North Korea then. They saved South Korea. Why not fuck up North Korea real quick?
Well dug in.
But don't
and
answer
the
that yet.
assault
I want to
morphed
see what he
into a
says.
protracted battle of attrition. But the perimeter came close to collapse on August 15th, when a push across the Naktong River by the
You know, I would think that Americans are technologically super advanced, but they're not at all.
KPA's elite troops managed to carve a salient known as...
I know these stories from movies where American soldiers say what they have seen in Korea is nothing against what they've seen in World War II.
the Naktong Bridge. Only the timely arrival of reinforcements averted disaster, all while
Jeez,
American air and naval assets kept
just not
the
enough
North
people?
Koreans from consolidating their gains as they proceeded to devastate KPA supply lines. While the battle for Pusan raged on, General MacArthur was busy coordinating an amphibious landing at Incheon, 100 miles or 160 kilometers behind enemy lines.
Looks like Common
When
Heroes.
told that Incheon was heavily defended and that adverse sea conditions made any landing a daunting prospect anyway, MacArthur responded thusly. The very arguments you have made as to the impracticabilities involved will tend to ensure, for me, the element of surprise.
What?
For the North Korean commander will reason that no one would be so brash as to make such an attempt.
Americans, man. Incheon's heavily defended beaches were easily cleared by a massive naval bombardment, allowing the Marine Task Force to land without incident and drive north to liberate Seoul.
Late August, and
he didn't
to
think they would naval
everyone's
invade that.
surprise, the landing at Incheon proved a massive
That's a
success.
sneaky HOI4 naval invasion, man.
This forced the KPA
What?
to
Where's
pull
it? Oh,
forces
God.
away from Pusan, allowing the defenders to stage a breakout on the 25th. This was the last straw for the North Koreans, and their morale finally shattered, with hundreds of soldiers surrendering en masse as the Americans drove
MacArthur was a crazy
north,
fucker,
and
man.
attracted the attention of Chinese border troops at the Yalu River. With Incheon secured, UN forces began their drive to liberate Seoul. The road to Seoul was a grueling campaign which saw intense combat around airfields and strongpoints, flamethrowers, and
There isn't really video games about this, right? We have so many video games of World War II, but that game has no real video games, right?
massive bombardments played a key role in dislodging stubborn KPA troops. The fighting only worsened when UN troops met the KPA in the Second Battle of Seoul. Brutal house-to-house combat
that
saw
must have
thousands
sucked,
of
man.
KPA soldiers
War
killed,
Thunder has
while
North
American
Korea, man.
casualties
One
hovered
Red
close
Dragon
to
also does
300.
that. Yeah, One Red
UN
Dragon,
forces
true.
ultimately seized the city.
No, I really wonder why they don't keep going.
On
Also, at this point, America has nukes and Russia doesn't, right? Why not keep going? I want to see.
September 28th,
I will
the
totally keep
invasion
going.
of South Korea had been defeated not just
Sporadic resistance continued through the 29th, and South Korean police began a crackdown on suspected KPA sympathizers and their families.
by American forces, but by a coalition including Thai, Ethiopian, British, Canadian, and Dutch soldiers coming together for a
Ethiopians.
truly international response. Morale was high.
Imagine that in fucking Ukraine, man. Imagine that, huh? But you can't, because I think Russia has a security seat in the UN, and they can say, should we attack Russia? Should we do something about Russia? I vote no. You cannot. Fuck you. Thank you, Thomas.
Victory was
Thank you, man.
sweet, and with your friend and mine, Douglas MacArthur, leading the charge, the thought on the ground was what
I
could
will
go
to attack
possibly
against
wrong?
me. They lead the
With
council.
South Korea secured, MacArthur and his superiors were left debating
The war officially never ended. They just went to that. But why not pushing? Why not? You can't just... You won. Just push them.
whether or not to go for a killing blow.
Russia is currently leading the UN Security Council. If that isn't the biggest fucking joke of all times, man. They are pushing? Okay.
blow against Kim Il-sung's regime. Syngman Rhee was still
Fuck you,
determined
guys. Learn how to
to
play
reunite
Counter-Strike.
the peninsula under his rule, and the men on the ground
Don't
were
spoil.
eager to take revenge on the north for the casualties
MacArthur
they had
was supposed to
suffered
only
during the
six-star
brutal
general.
fighting around Pusan and the Nakdong River. Ultimately, the Joint Chiefs authorized MacArthur to invade North Korea as long as such operations had a reasonable chance of success. As the Americans rested on their laurels and planned for their invasion of North Korea, the People's Republic of China moved troops closer to North Korea, ultimately assembling a force of almost 500,000 men at the Yalu River. After the intense battles in the south,
they
Pyongyang
went
fell
up to
with
Pyongyang.
astonishing ease.
They took
The
it.
dispirited
The
KPA
fuck?
offered virtually no resistance, and the capital
What
was taken
happened?
on October 19.
Why would you give it back?
The U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff ordered MacArthur to prepare the way for unification of a free and independent.
This is so interesting because I genuinely don't know what's gonna happen now. I know you guys are all experts. This is like a movie. What the fuck is gonna happen now? Is Iron Man gonna drop in? Is China gonna go, hey, you have to go back? It must be
Unaware
China or Russia.
that UN success had awakened a sleeping giant, the People's Republic of China. China had watched the Korean War with concern that only
But you can't show weakness there, man. You fucking mobilize America, man. You get fucking ready. You fuck them up, man. And you establish a democratic China, bro. And then you have a democratic China that shits on Russia, bro. But you can't. The people are probably already too indoctrinated.
as their ideological brethren in the north were routed by the capitalist forces. The
MacArthur
same day
wanted to actually
Pyongyang was
nuke China.
captured, 300,000 soldiers of the People's Army, led by veterans of the Chinese Civil War, crossed the border into Korean territory, and a whole new phase of the conflict began. The first Chinese offensive began on October 25th.
Wait, they actually came in? I didn't even... What, the Chinese are fighting Americans now? What the fuck?
an easy victory at the Battle of Unsan. But the People's Army did not press its advantage, withdrawing quickly back into the mountains.
Why didn't
Then,
America
just
go
a
all
week
in, man?
after
You
the
fucking
first
America.
offensive, the North Korean winter
go crazy
set
on
in,
this shit.
with temperatures dropping to -8 degrees Fahrenheit or -22 degrees Celsius, accompanied by howling gales. In spite of these appalling conditions, MacArthur insisted that
winter's
the
coming. Thank you,
offensive
Steve
continue.
Doggo.
But the second
That's a
encounter
World War
with
II
the
America fell off?
Chinese at the Changshan River on November 25th
I
was
didn't know they
a
were fighting, man.
disaster, with the ROC 2nd Corps being wiped out and the US 8th Army being thrown into a disorderly rout. Then, on the
Damn,
27th,
America.
the
That's not very good for you,
30,000-strong
huh?
US 10th Corps was encircled by over 120,000
Dude, I always thought
Chinese
Americans
soldiers.
are like in HOI4 when you play. If I will play America right now, right, or let's say like 1945, I will turn America into a powerhouse of technology. I go in there and I soft attack the shit out of this motherfucker. MacArthur, you suck. What the hell?
near the Chosun Reservoir. For 17 days, the Americans fought desperately to escape the trap before finally breaking out to the port of Hungnam, where they were evacuated. The survivors were dubbed the Chosen Few, in a bitter play on words. Chosun Reservoir was a horrendous battle, with Chinese forces
would have
regularly
capitulated China
offering
by
no
52.
quarter to their American adversaries. Left with no choice, the UN coalition was forced to go on the defensive,
Then
and
why did
Pyongyang
China
was
not push
abandoned
anymore?
on the 5th of December. The rapid retreat saw both UN forces and Korean civilians withdraw before the Chinese advance, and the journey south was fraught with accidents and tragedies,
This is
including
why?
the death of General Walker, commander of all US Army forces
Wow.
in Korea.
They got the fucking general.
Only a personal visit to
Commander.
the troops by Walker's successor, General Matthew B. Ridgway, forestalled outright panic.
Damn.
Even so, there was nothing
Crazy.
the coalition could do to stop the
No one
enemy
is unbeatable,
advance.
man.
And in January, 7 Chinese armies washed over Seoul, forcing the defenders to retreat, and Seoul changed hands for the 3rd time. Relief
It's actually like an old man living in Seoul. Every day you look out of the window, there's some other
for
guy
the
walking by, man.
shell-shocked
with
defenders
different
only
uniform.
came when the Chinese supply lines were broken by US air power, forcing them to begin a slow withdrawal back to the 38th parallel. The UN's fortunes had well and truly turned. Yet General MacArthur remained convinced that victory was possible, and
Yeah, I don't understand. Call everyone. Call West Germany, France, UK. Bring them all in. Bam, 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 Junge.
even pressured President Truman to
the fuck are
authorize
they
the
doing?
use of
Thank you,
nuclear
Mia Khalifa.
weapons on Korean soil.
fan.
After weeks of enduring this insubordinate behavior, Truman sacked MacArthur and promoted General Ridgway in his place.
Whoa!
Meanwhile, the Chinese
So the American president was a communist all along.
were experiencing issues
The Chinese had severe supply issues throughout the war, which forced them to repeatedly surrender captured territory, call of others, blah, 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 blah.
of their own.
I'm with MacArthur here, man. I'm with MacArthur, dude.
Coalition
Fuck 'em
air
all up,
superiority remained absolute, and North Korea now resembled a moonscape of craters from ceaseless US bomb
Oh
attacks.
shit, bro. Some
Ridgway
wildlification.
undertook several initiatives in his new position. Operation Wolfhound saw a massive air reconnaissance effort reveal the People's Army were holding their positions, if not withdrawing, and Ridgway capitalized on this information to launch Operation Thunderbolt, a new drive toward Seoul. Thunderbolt brought the UN forces to the city, but the daring offensive, Operation Ripper, saw the capital change hands for the fourth and final time.
Jesus.
From this point on, Ridgway and the UN forces doubled down on their philosophy of overwhelming.
This guy was actually a Nazi German fighter and a Korean fighter.
Ridgway became focused on
Communists
destroying
are all
the
about
Chinese
throwing
rather
lives
than
at a war,
retaking
man.
North Korea. But the war devolved into a stalemate of attrition, with salients developing in the shifting lines and hardpoints like Porkchop Hill and White Horse Mountain changing hands in bloody tugs of war. Superior firepower or not, the People's Army was still in the fight, and the US Joint Chiefs estimated that a renewed march on Pyongyang would result in a minimum of 200,000 US casualties, an utterly unthinkable price for the war-weary American public to be asked to pay.
Yeah, the public doesn't want to.
As the UN troops duked it out with the
I get this is all a bit more complex. You can't just keep going, man.
Chinese, politicians in Washington began to push for a settlement. They saw little chance of ending the conflict any other way. Peace talks began in mid-1951, while Ridgway and his cohorts continued to battle the Chinese. But neither side wanted to risk admitting defeat,
North Korea let his big brother play.
fearful of the reaction from both their government and their constituents. Belligerent diplomats and petty cultural misunderstandings caused negotiations to
he
stall
had to
on
use PP for
multiple
war propaganda,
occasions as a result. There was also the thorny issue of POWs.
I guarantee you though, nowadays, if they would fight again, man, without nukes, bruh, the South will destroy the North, man.
Over 60,000 Korean and Chinese
Because that's the power of capitalism, man. Progress, technological progress.
prisoners refused repatriation, preferring to stay in the South. This would result in much
Dude, they would have Samsung drones. Samsung.
bickering between the two sides, dragging matters on for over a
All Korean phones will connect to Wi-Fi, become fucking transformers, man.
year until a ceasefire agreement
Samsung.
was finally
Samsung.
agreed on July 27, 1953. The deal established a demilitarized zone at the 38th parallel and set up a neutral nations repatriation commission to settle the ongoing POW issue. Syngman Rhee naturally refused to sign the agreement, and officially, North and South Korea are still at war to this very day. When all was said and done, the status quo came at the cost of 3 million lives.
Wow. Holy shit, bro. Oh, that's something you guys would like. There's a World War II channel. Ach du Scheiße, man. Nazi breeding farms. What the fuck? Operation Barbarossa. Mussolini playing Hitler. What the fuck is this shit? Nazis on crystal meth. Hi, Hitler. This is the best content for you guys, man. Easy.
Most of whom were civilians. Both sides committed a number of massacres, but the United States denied their own war crimes in Korea for many years while publicizing the brutality of their enemies. From 2005 to 2010, a South Korean commission conducted a large-scale investigation of war crimes, concluding that 82% were perpetrated by South Korean forces, with 18% perpetrated by North Korean forces. Many were motivated by fears of communist insurgents hiding among civilian populations. Like its Cold War cousin, the Vietnam War, the Korean War was a long, bloody, and ultimately futile conflict. The only difference was that the US succeeded in forgetting Korea.
Look at the difference nowadays. Thank you, Codex. North Koreans are gonna meet South
안녕하십니까.
Koreans.
반갑습니다. 남측 성원들을 안내하게 한 안내 책임자 육군 상자 리종수라고 합니다. 성함 어떻게 부르십니까?
윤명식 대령입니다.
This card, do you understand them? You should understand them, this card, right?
저도 바라는 바입니다.
Look at the difference, bro. These guys have equipment from the 50s, bro.
이 역사적인 장면을 찍고 있습니다. 의미가 있는 것 같고 우리가
우리
가서
쪽 민경 처소 파괴 종료에 대해서 여의하고 오후에는
Who is North?
2시부터
Who is South?
기초
The North Korean speaks very
헌병
weird.
처소에 대한 검증을 진행합니다.
Russian army versus Ukraine army.
여기에 이렇게 있던
Dude, don't give him information, man. He's the enemy. What are you
연결돼
doing?
있어서
원래 이거 처소 연결했던 거.
Stream sniping.
What are you still doing here, mate?
Jeez. Well, if you want to see more, click these videos. Have fun. Looking good, boy.